And God wills that we continue as long as you can hear me. And aren't you glad that we don't need a lot of light to preach? If we open the Word, we get enough light to show us the way. See? What I didn't tell you is that when I was telling you all that, in my heart I was saying, let there be light. All right. God sometimes uses nations that are wicked to judge those who are less wicked. 10th chapter of Isaiah. Woe to those who decree iniquitous decrees and the writers who keep writing oppression. He's talking about people who make unjust laws, make demands of people that are unfair. To turn aside the needy from justice and to rob the poor of my people their right, that widows may be their spoil and that they may make the fatherless their prey. People taking away even the rights of widows and orphans. God says, I'm watching it all in the land of Israel. What is God going to do about it? There was idolatry, there was immorality, there were all of these things that were taking place. And what is God's response? Well, notice what the text says in verse 5. Ah, Assyria, the rod of my anger, the staff in their hands is my fury. That particular last part of the verse is a little difficult to interpret. Some translations interpret it, and the club of my fury, which probably is what God meant. But he says, Assyria is the rod of my anger and the club of my fury. God says, I'm going to use Assyria to punish you, and you are going to be oppressed. Notice what the text says. Against a godless nation I send him, and against the people of my wrath I command him to take the spoil and to seize the plunder and to tread them down like mire in the streets. Wow, God says, I'm going to use Syria to do it because he is the instrument of my wrath. Assyria, ancient Assyria. Not the modern-day Assyrians, some of whom worship with us, but ancient Assyria was a very, very evil, oppressive, and terribly cruel country. Far worse than Israel could have ever been. And Assyria had weapons and ways of waging war that Israel did not have. And God says, I'm going to bring Assyria down, and Assyria is the rod of my anger, and the Assyrians are going to come, and they're going to plunder, and they're going to destroy you. And they did. If I remember correctly, when the Assyrians came in about 722 BC, they took 27,000 of the Jews, and they took them to Assyria, and they assimilated there with all of the Assyrians, and those tribes were never heard from again. Years ago, there was a group by the name of the British Israelites. They believed that those Jews actually ended up going to Britain, but they were destroyed from the face of the earth as a people of identity. God says, that's what I'm going to do. And then they brought Assyrians into the land, and they intermarried with some of the Jews that were left, and that was what the Samaritans were. But God says, I'm going to use Assyria to punish you. Now let's think of America for a moment. How good are we? Well, we may be better than some nations in some areas, we may be worse, but for a moment, let's just talk about all of the blessings of the United States of America. Is there any country on earth that has ever had the freedoms that we have here in the United States? The fact that we can still worship here and do so in freedom. The fact that the Word of God can still go out over Christian broadcasting and Christian television. America has sent more missionaries to different parts of the earth to share the good news of the gospel than any other country in existence. The Americans are a generous people, sometimes almost too generous. Well, this is Pastor Lutzer, and I don't want to give the impression, of course, that America doesn't have huge problems and huge sins. So when you listen to the complete message in context, you'll understand that I'm saying that. But there's no question about the fact that we have been blessed as a country. But that doesn't mean that we have a claim on God. But believe me, it means that God does have a claim on us. Because he has blessed us in many exceptional ways, unto whom much is given, much is required. We're living at a time when there's darkness over the land, and we can expect that darkness to spread. Let us make sure that we have a strong witness for Christ wherever He has planted us. Let us make sure that we uphold the truth of the gospel in a loving, winsome, compelling way. And let us at the same time pray and ask God to save our nation, not because the nation needs to be saved, but we're interested in the individuals that comprise the nation. And let us call up to God that in mercy that He might prevent some of the things that probably will be happening from coming to pass. Well, I've shared my heart with you today. Join us next time as we continue this very, very important series of messages.
Thank you, Pastor Lutzer. Erwin Lutzer has begun a series asking, is God on America's side? Tomorrow, more on God's judgment of nations and why we may be in His crosshairs. Running to Win comes to you from the Moody Church in Chicago. Is God on America's side? Dr. Lutzer has written a book by this title, a book we'll send as our thank you when you give a gift of any amount to support Running to Win. Ask for your copy when you call 1-800-215-5001. That's 1-800-215-5001. Online, go to offerrtw.com. That's offerrtw, all one word, .com. Or write to Running to Win at Box 11174, Chicago, Illinois, 60611. This is Dave McAllister. Join us tomorrow for our next edition of Running to Win.